I wonder if you could tell us a story or two about lessons that you got particularly from particular teachers.
Are you leading me to a certain answer?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I mean, I know that you have spoken very highly of some wonderful instructors that you had.
Yes.
So.
Well, actually, my first very long-term teacher was, we grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and my first long-term teacher was the first assistant principal cellist of the Cleveland Orchestra, Richard Weiss, whom I studied with for 7 years. And I mean, it was just incredibly important in my musical development. He had that fantastic combination of being, of course, very demanding, very strict, but also really allowing me to grow at my own pace, and kind of it wound up almost being a sort of a collaborative effort by the time I got a little bit older. I also worked with my father quite a bit.
Yeah, how was that? He's not here, by the way. Her parents are not here, so I expect a little higher level of truth-telling tonight than we might otherwise experience.
Well, no, it was actually, he was fantastic, because, well, he's, he actually has a very childlike sense of humor, even though he's one of the most sophisticated, geniuses and creative geniuses that I know. So he actually had this amazing way of distancing himself from me. Like the father-daughter relationship almost disappeared in the practice room, and quite literally, because he actually adopted about 5 different characters, especially when I was little, and I'm sure Josh has some very strong memories of those voices too, because some of the voices got quite loud. And there was one character in particular that I maybe this will just sound silly to you, but it was actually quite effective, quite an effective method. This character actually talked in opposites. So the better I'd play, the madder the character would get, and the funnier he would get, because he would start stomping and screaming, and and sort of like for example, on the cello, if you want to make a brighter, sort of clearer sound, if you want to project well, you have to place the bow closer to the bridge, away from the fingerboard, and he would say, I want you to play with a lot less sound. Play closer to the fingerboard. And so then I would think it was very funny to play closer to the bridge and say, hi, I got you.
What was he teaching you?
There were several antidotes.
What was he teaching
everything.
you?
With the characters?
With those characters, what was he?
No, I mean he was teaching me. I mean it was just through different mediums, but I mean cello technique, music. Intelligent ideas. I mean, everything really.
It was the same ideas, just with this comedic touch. I mean, we would be playing better because we wanted to see how mad we could actually make our character. My dad's character. So, if he would say something like "play closer to the fingerboard," we would play as far on the bridge as we could to make him start screaming, which was, that was the fun part.
Make him funny. Yeah.
That's a remarkable thing, because you hear horror stories about parents who are musicians teaching their children, parents who can't do it, or children who can't, somehow the relationship goes completely awry.
Well, it was, I think actually both our parents were quite good about separating the actual personal relationship from the musical relationship. They were very, very well separated. I mean, and we were also brought up to think, we were people first, musicians second. So
at some point, one of your teachers said that you were too talented to run wild. And it helped to develop a sense of seriousness about your gift. What was that? Can you tell us about that?
From the time between when I was very young, time between I was 4 and 9, this was actually before I started working with my dad. In this unique way, let's say, and I practiced maybe half an hour to an hour maximum per day of formal practice, and then I really loved the cello, so I would take it into my room and kind of bang around at it and try to teach myself repertoire that was much too advanced for my level, which Dvorak concerto, which I really wanted to play, and then I would, because all of my teachers forbade me to play it, I would I tried to figure it out on my own, and so I would just play like this, and so I quite literally ran wild with the instrument, and then I played for. A couple of teachers who yelled, so they started yelling at my parents and saying, why do you let her run around wild like this? Because, she's creating so many bad physical habits. And in fact, when I was about 9, I started, there was much more discipline in the practice room. You started practicing a lot of scales, etudes, and longer hours of sort of serious formal practice. And I had to undo some of the physical habits that I had created.
Was that your parents or your teachers' discipline, that they insisted that you practice more or practice in a particular way? I mean, it's clear that you were born to do this and driven to it, but at some point, you yourself became settled and focused in the work of becoming a cellist.
Yeah, and that was that turning point. But it was actually, I very much wanted to go in that direction as well, because I knew that there were things that I really wanted to be able to do that I didn't know how to do, and I knew that this was the way to do it.
In a slight sense.
Even at that age.
So they sort of started to put you in harness, and you were glad for it.
No, I mean, harness is a word I don't quite like, but
okay.
Yes, it was, every musician has to go through a period of working, really kind of building a foundation. And that's when I did it.
When you were 13, one of your big dreams came true. You got to play the Dvorak Cello Concerto.
When I was 14, yeah.
14. With the Cleveland Orchestra?
No, Rococo Variations was
I must be reading someone else's bio. I'm so sorry. Sorry. This is maybe Yo-Yo Ma's story. I'm sorry.
By all means, keep reading then. That's great. No, but when I was 14, I actually played in Carnegie Hall with the New York Youth Symphony. And that was Dvorak Concerto. So
that was the realization of a big dream, because the Dvorak had been
that was my my ultimate dream at that time. Yeah.
So after that, you'd reached a major goal. What was next? What was next? You'd accomplished this great goal. There you were, just a young woman.
Just doing more of that and learning, creating relationships with other conductors and. But also growing as a musician. I mean, of course, I knew I was not finished. I hope I'm not finished now. I hope I will never be finished, really. But it was also, traveling more, learning more. I was just having a great time.
You also began playing professionally at the time you were in Columbia University. Is that right? Is that you? Okay.
That is me. But
just checking. Good.
But
good.
But playing professionally sort of happened even earlier. Like when I was in high school, I was already playing.
But that was a very focused time in your life. Columbia, you were doing papers on the road.
Yeah.
And at concerts.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. I was writing papers and learning scores. So.
Was that the most intense, focused time of study and work in your life so far?
Well, I'm playing a lot more concerts now than I was then. So, I mean, I would say right now is an incredibly intense time in a very different way. But yes, I didn't sleep for 4 years. Really, because I graduated on time, which I didn't know actually whether I could do, and so I mean when I wasn't playing, I was writing and reading, studying. I mean, I probably slept maybe 3-4 hours a night or something. So.
Good for you. You also wrote at that time that that you learned to do concentrated practice, to really concentrate in practice and make the most of your practice time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. Lots of us here play music a little bit and practice, but you said, I believe, that you figured out how to get more out of 2 hours in practice than you'd previously gotten in 4 or 5 or 6. What is that about?
Well, several things. I mean, I can't discount the fact that, between the time I was 9 and 18, I really did such very good concentrated work, long hours. So I really had built a foundation by then, which was solid. But I had limited time, so I learned to be very efficient in the practice room, and to, I kind of learned what worked, what actually would last. There are certain methods of practicing slowly, but in a certain way, so that it would actually translate into learning something much more quickly, practicing certain things in different rhythms, or,
There's a great violinist who, I can't remember who it is, but he told me that he is so busy with his life. He has kids at home, and he's also had some physical problems with the violin, so he practices 45 minutes a day, and this is I honestly can't remember who it is, but he's playing all over the world. He practices while on a exercise bike for 45 minutes a day, and that's his only practice. And he's playing the whole violin repertoire with major orchestras. So I mean,
it is possible.
I think a lot of people that are as busy as my sister and as soloists really have to learn how to do that at some point.
Yeah.
The intent and focus are incredible. I think that's a fascinating piece of the musicianship that you've built up over time.